What's good, family? I say an old tap to everybody that's tuning in. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Please like, share, and subscribe as you continue to tune in to this video. Again, as always, I'm your host, Zach Taylor. Another episode of E-Up. This is for y'all edification and education. So this is the continuation of what's going to be a great show and a great episode. I can't wait to get started. As you guys see in the topic title of this episode, we're talking about black nationalism and excellence. So today we'll basically more so cover on some ways we can better support the black community ourselves, build wealth, and actually build a legitimate nation and community within ourselves. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Definitely we'll touch on some stuff like this later on as we create more content. By definition, nationalism is the identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. I'm gonna read that again so some of y'all really get it. Identification, this is the definition of nationalism, the identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. So like a nationalist for here in America, you probably would consider them a patriot, right? It's also the advocacy or support for the political independence of a particular nation of people. Haiti got their independence in the year 1908, so they declared themselves an independent nation, separate from that of the British rule, right? Malcolm X, when talking about economics, he said that we have to become involved in a program of re-education. The program is to educate our people into the importance of knowing that when you spend your dollar out of the community in which you live, the community you spend the dollar becomes more richer, while the one without becomes more poor. And what this is pointing to is, right, so I live here in the state of Missouri. I live in the Florissant area. There are many locally black-owned businesses, or just businesses in general. If I go out into another city like Chesterfield for a particular service, right? Like, so let's say something wrong with my car, and I go all the way out to Chesterfield. Now, even though that company may be black-owned or whatever, minority, whatever you want to, look at in terms of the demographics, but because now that business is located in a community is not where I live, I don't get to see that money get put towards the funding and building up of my community. A lot of times we drive through our neighborhoods in which we work in, live in, children go to school at, and wonder why things have not been changed, right, in terms of things getting built up or remodeled. We often look at the conditions of our community and wonder why it's so poor, and that's because, well, a lot of us don't really spend our money in our community, and like Malcolm X said, while you spend your money somewhere else, they get richer and yours gets poorer. So please just try to be more conscious about where you spend your money. It doesn't necessarily have to be a black-owned business, but in terms of your own community, just think about how much of an impact that may have if every day, instead of you spending your money 2 cities away that you might pass by going to work, coming from work, if you actually spend it in your own community, the changes that might happen, if even 50, maybe 60% of the people that in your surrounding community do the same thing. Moving on to another famous, I would say well-known, educated man in the African American diaspora, Marcus Garvey. Many know him as being a strong advocate for Pan-Africanism and being one to adamantly talk about us going back to Africa and creating our own nation, creating our own government and things of that nature, right? But in terms of nationalism, talking about business, Marcus Garvey stated that the man without a business of his own or without training in a particular work is always at a disadvantage in making a living. He also said that great wealth is in commerce and industry. If you properly invest your 25 cents at 9 a.m. by 5 p.m., you may make 50 cents. Marcus Garvey here is telling a big truth here. When you don't have a skill set or a trade or something that not everyone has, well, that you kind of leaves you in the murky water. If you just are a you know, employee, right? All you know how to do is apply to a job, get the job, and then do whatever they tell you to do, but you have no particular skills of your own. Well, then now what happens if that job that you work at shuts down, or you get fired or laid off, or like what happened with this past year with the pandemic? You know, you have to get vaccinated, right? What's now going to happen for you and your family if you don't have your own way of making money, right? Your own skill, right? People who, I've heard many stories of people even before the pandemic who may have went through a transition where they wanted to go from the light side, or I'm sorry, the left side of the cash flow quadrant, being an employee, to the right side, straight to being a business owner, right? But they had to start off being self-employed while they were an employee, and things happen the way they do, and next you know they cut off, you know, that first quadrant of being an employee, and they become self-employed full time, right? Because they've created their own job, they created a business, and have a specific skill set that allows them to make money even if they're not working for somebody. And especially in this time, as you all can see, if you don't have a small business or some type of skill set or trade at your disposal, then you are out of luck. Again, disadvantage. Commerce and industry, talking about investing, talking about properly putting your money in the right space and right place, and allowing it to grow so that you can create wealth down the line. That's not always about you working for it, but allowing the money to work for you. These are things that have been preached for a long time. We have just not always been adamant about putting them into practice, as well as continuing to teach these things to the future generations. Moving on, another scholar, author, one of his most prominent books is called PowerNationalism by Dr. Claude Anderson. He spoke on education. He speaks on education and economics heavily. And he spoke about schools, how the school institutions were started in 1860, pretty much designed to create and build white labor forces. Because who were they wanting and looking to employ and create these new ways of industry and different businesses? Well, white men. Because there was a time, again, this is 1860, so this is not a time where my people, my culture, the African American culture, the African culture was really allowed to really seek any jobs and do anything empowering in the labor force. So they created a system and organized a labor union to where now everything is really working in their favor, right? So what do we want to do now? Public policy, going back to the thought of, you know, when they first built this country, let's look at something like when we went to the moon, right? If we want to go to the moon, what are the steps needed to take to build the students with the skills and the attitudes and the competencies so that we can go to the moon? And this goes back to what we need to be doing, creating our own schools, creating our own farms, creating our own businesses and jobs so that we can do this specifically for us, but we can always include everyone if necessary, if we want to, right? But all these things are very essential, right? Building a business, don't beg your oppressor, right, or the European to help you or to aid you. You can get it done. There's been many people that have gotten it done in terms of building a community, building a job system or corporation without the aid of someone that doesn't look like them or their former oppressor. I'm pretty sure many of you might have heard of or knowledgeable of the several families in the state of Georgia that built up and created their own community in the city of Atlanta, right? No help from the white man, no funding, any of that. They just did it themselves, right? Y'all remember the FUBU brand, for us, by us? That's what I'm trying to get y'all to see and understand, and to try to grasp a little bit more. You ain't got to do everything, right? Because you're only one person, or your family is just a few people. But just start slowly and gradually to making your efforts within the community about your culture, because this is how we, as a whole, actually become a voice. We really don't have a voice. You think voting, when it comes to presidency and your local offices, is a voice. Everybody got one, so everybody's allowed to vote, you know. But what do we own? What do we control in the community, in economics? What do we control? Nothing. But this is how we gain control, right? By creating our own wealth, creating our own banks, our own businesses, and other institutions that allow us to gain control over many resources. Keep your dollar in your community. I spoke about this earlier in the video. Keep your dollar in your community so that you can build different type of institutions and organizations that you feel are necessary for the uplift of your community. Right? And as I come to a close, I'm going to throw out a few stats, and then that'll be the end conclusion of this video. And please, guys, if you like what you're hearing so far, please let me know, and I will start building the content to make another video in relation to black wealth. Right? 2012. These are statistics from 2012. I know that was almost 10 years ago, right? But I doubt too many of these statistics have changed, as well as, even if they have, it's still shocking to hear. If we have grown from this number or these numbers, we haven't grown too much. So in 2012, it was studies show that there were 40 million African Americans in the U.S. That equates to just 12.3% of the U.S. population. We account for approximately $1 trillion in spending. Yet we own zero assets in American wealth. Black Americans represent less than 1% of the world's populace, yet control 1.4% of its capital resources. So what I just said was the small percentage of black people representing America, 12.3%, we own nothing in America. And even at 1% of the world's population, we control only 1% of the world's assets. One out of 5 families live in poverty. Over 40% of single mom-headed families are poor. Guys, some of these stats are familiar to you because you maybe live in these situations or you see it every day. But understand that this is no accident. This is not a luck of the draw when it comes to the conditions of our communities. We have been preconditioned through slavery and the Jim Crow era to be enemies with one another, not support one another. When integration happened, we stopped depending on ourselves and doing for ourselves and integrating with our oppressor and going to them for our financial aid and going to them for our support and going to them for whatever we needed instead of going to each other like we were before. So these are some things that, again, I hope you guys found insightful, and that if we, again, just start with you. And we look to slowly change some of these things in the direction in which we are going ourselves, we will easily impact those around us for them to do better and to live within the community more. Just because you go to HBCU or you pledge in you're part of the Divine Nine, or you are you love black people, right? don't mean that you are consciously, spiritually, legitimately for the people. We have all been preconditioned to think like our oppressor, and thus we treat ourselves like such, right? So slowly change your thinking, slowly change your approach to your people, your culture, and you will see some changes start to take effect. I hope that you guys like this video. Again, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have, comment below if you have any suggestions or ideas or anything else in relation to black excellence, nationalism, African American wealth, economics. Please let me know. There are many other people, of course, I can share with you guys when it comes to this stuff. If you guys have suggestions as well, please feel free to share those in the comments. But that's it for now. That's the word. I will see y'all when I see y'all. Ashe and Otep. Peace.